Well, welcome back to Simple Truth. We're in the story of Joseph in Genesis. We're in chapter 39. Joseph has just been sold into slavery, just become a servant, and God just happened to place him in a very powerful Egyptian home. So he went from being a brother, one of 12, to being sold by those brothers. Now he's a servant in Potiphar's home. Again, I want to remind you, Joseph didn't do anything to deserve this, right? Again, we could talk about some pride maybe. We could talk about how he handled things, all that kind of stuff. But this is seemingly is a God orchestrated, allowed plan, right? How to get Joseph from point A to point B. If God had said to Joseph, hey, I need you to go to Egypt for me, and I need you to follow this path, there's a likelihood that Joseph would have said, nope, not going to leave my father, not going to leave what I have, not going to leave everything. And so we're always under the illusion that if God told us what he wanted from us, that we would just be obedient, we would just do it, right? We would just go, we'd get it done. That's not true at all. A lot of times, if God had told us the plan that he had for us, how he was going to get us somewhere, it would be no, right? So God knows that. And so what does God do? He sets up a plan of his own. He says, I need to get you from A to B. You're not going to do it on your own. So here's how we're going to do it, right? And normally, that has a lot to do with emotional attachments to things. That's what draws us to places, to people, to situations. But it also has a lot to do with the parameters of the situation. Like, what's this going to do for you, and how is this going to mold you into who I want you to be? So we've seen Joseph with a dream that his brothers and his mom and his dad, they're all going to bow down to him and they're going to serve him, seemingly. That's the dream, right? So God says, here's the idea. Now let's make this happen, right? Now, I would have guessed that would have just been about making all of Joseph's other brothers die. He could have been the only one left in line. It would have just been him and Benjamin, and then he would have been and have everything that his father and mother had. Like that seemingly would be a pretty good idea. Just get rid of all the first 10 brothers. Let's get here. But God says, no, those same 10 brothers need to be involved in this situation. So we're going to work this all out. So pick it up with me in verse 6, right? Again, reminding you that Potiphar left all that he had in Joseph's charge. Because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So again, I want to remind you, are you that way for other people? Other people, when they're around you, do they have no worry about anything, right? We long for those kind of relationships. We dream about those kind of relationships, right? That when we're with somebody, we don't have to worry about anything. We don't have to worry about how we look. We don't have to worry about how we act. We don't have to worry about what we say. We don't have to worry about what we eat. We don't have to worry about anything, right? They just take great care of us. The truth is that should be reciprocated, right? So that we are taking good care of them, they're taking good care of us. Like, it's a good place to be. But the problem is most of us get into relationships and it doesn't exactly work that way, or there's not longevity in it. It starts off that way, right? You and I are great friends, and man, we just want to love on each other, take care of each other, but eventually that either wears off, right? Or something happens to disturb that relationship. Well, the truth of the matter is it doesn't have to wear off, right? If we're Christians and we're committed to it, it doesn't have to wear off. And it doesn't have to be that something happens to it, but normally that's what happens. That's where we find Joseph. It says Joseph was handsome. Imagine that. He's got God's favor, and he's tall and scruffy, right? He looks great, looks like a lumberjack. It's fantastic. And women are going to be drawn to him. Now, I don't know why God doesn't make people that he gives favor to all ugly, right? So that nobody's attracted to any part of them except for the favor. That would be really helpful. But frequently, when God puts a package together, it's like David, right? He was handsome, he was good looking, right? And he had the Spirit of the Lord on him, which makes him attractive in all ways to all people, right? That's how it works. It's funny that people who are ugly in nature, not just physically ugly, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about ugly in nature. They just don't have the Spirit of the Lord with them. Those people aren't attractive. But it's funny because I've seen people who have gotten hold of God, and God just transforms their life, and he makes them into a new person. And that includes a lot of times physical appearance as well, right? God doesn't just pretty up our insides, he pretties up our outsides. Now again, that's not up to you to decide whether he's made you pretty enough, right? That's up to God to decide. But it's funny how people, when their countenance changes, it makes them attractive to people. After a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." Translated, this woman looked at Joseph and said, "I want you," right? Like I want to be with you, right? She decided that she wanted him. Now, again, here's the truth of the matter. She was the wife of the owner of Joseph. So Joseph really had no right to say no to her. She really had all the rights here. He was a possession, right? He was a possession of this woman, of her husband. And so she actually had a right to ask this of him, right? And then any man would tell you, hey, listen, if you don't have any options, you don't have any choices, well, then let's just go ahead and let's just do it. Abraham, he didn't argue with his wife Sarah when she said, hey, take my handmaiden, sleep with her, and give me a child, right? Most men aren't going to argue with this, but somehow Joseph, it goes on, it says, but he refused, right? And he said to his master's wife, behold, because of my master has no concern about anything in the house. He has put everything he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So look at this. Joseph, he takes into account that this isn't about him and this woman. This isn't even really about him and this his master. This is about him and God. He made this into a him and God thing when he didn't have to, right? He could have taken them out and could have said, hey, listen, I don't have any choice. I'm a slave. I'm a servant. I got to do what she says. But instead, he realizes right here, he serves a higher master, right? He somehow grasps in the middle of all of the maybe desires of maybe the attraction, maybe the unattraction. And in the moment, Joseph grasps that he serves a higher master. So I want you to think about that with me on this simple truth. Do you recognize that you serve a higher master? No matter what situation you're in, no matter what your boss asks you to do, no matter what your wife asks you to do, no matter what your kids ask you to do, your church asks you to do, your pastor asks you to do, no matter what your friends ask you to do, no matter what you ask you to do you understand that you serve a higher master? Right? That your boss can ask you to do wrong things. Your wife, husband can ask you to do wrong things. Your children can ask you to do wrong things. But you answer to a higher calling. You answer to a higher master. It's what should keep us in check. It's the intestinal fortitude that comes up in those moments and says, I might lose my job. I might lose my family. I might lose everything. But I answer to God. Right? I serve a master of one. Right? I work with God, with my boss, with my wife, with my husband. I work with God, with my children, with my friends and church and family, all these things. But I serve one. Right? One is my master. And his calling on my life supersedes everything else. If you can keep that perspective, if you can get that and you can hold on to that, you are going to do amazing things with God, right? And you're going to bless and you're going to be favored everywhere you go. Now, here's the downside of that, is we're going to find out. That doesn't mean everything's going to go perfect for you. God's favor doesn't mean everything goes according to you. God's favor means everything goes according to him, right? And so if we are with God and we have his favor, then we're getting from his point A to point B, not my point A to point B. So join me next time for Simple Truth as we continue on with this story.